Hello and welcome back to Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger on Thursday, October 14th, 2021. And welcome back to our very spooky Halloween series where I'm going to show you some Halloween related spooks and horrors and scary stuff. Those of you who cannot see the screen may feel glad that you can't right now, because if I had my camera angled properly, then what is showing on the screen should be a little strange looking stick figure and a bundle of sticks. Inside this bundle of sticks is a human tongue, a bunch of bloody human teeth, and if you look really closely, an eyeball. Yeah, very, very gruesome. This is one of those instances where the action figure comes with accessories that is worthy enough for them to open the show with. Although they're so small that I honestly hope that you guys can see the way I have the camera set up, uh, shooting down from the top with the accessories laid out on the counter. Hopefully, you guys can actually see it. So last week we looked at ghosts, and honestly, the ghosts we looked at, with the exception of Mayhem, weren't very scary. So this week we are dialing things up a notch or two. We're going to be looking at witches, or in more particular, a witch. Now, I was lamenting earlier that it's strange that of the nearly 1,000 action figures I have in my collection, I actually don't have a proper traditional witch. When I was thinking about doing witches, I was thinking, do I have anyone with like a witch's hat and a broom and an old woman's appearance? And honestly, I don't. So the witch I'm going to show you is a little bit out of left field and just not what you're thinking about. But first, let me take you back to 1995. Either 95 or 96. Uh, a new movie just hit the theater, and one of my childhood friend, Mike, in fact, Mike, man, if you're still watching my Toy Thursday, if you're still watching, hey, and yeah, dude, I still remember you and I going to watch this movie. Let's see if you remember what I'm talking about. So we went to watch this movie, and it was supposedly very scary. And what surprised me was there was hardly anybody in the entire theater. I think there was only, like, including Mike and myself, there were only maybe 7 people in the entire theater watching this movie. It was just not a very good selling day. And uh, after watching the movie, Mike said to me, he said, kind of feel like a waste of money. The footage was really bad. It's really shaky. It's really amateur, and you don't get to see there's no scary stuff in the entire movie. The scariest stuff you saw was a bundle of sticks with some bloody teeth in it, and that's it. You didn't see any, you don't see anything. So it's a lousy movie. And I said to Mike, I said, "Welcome to my world." I think it's a great movie. From my perspective, it's a great movie. Maybe because you guys are so used to seeing high quality pictures and seeing how gruesome and grotesque the monsters are with your eyes, that you think it's a lousy movie when you don't get that. But for me, who have to rely on the storyline, on the plot, and just listening to what's going on and trying to puzzle things together, I think it was a fantastic movie. In fact, if anything, that was actually one of the more scary movie I've ever watched, in my opinion. And yes, I'm talking about the Blair Witch Project. The story is a simple one. In 1994, three college students went to a small town to investigate the legend of the Blair Witch, the story of this grotesque creature that lived in the woods in the local area. They were never heard from again. The footage from their camera were found a year later and then published, and that's what we saw in the movie. And that is why the footage was so shaky, because we were mostly seeing it from first-person view, and people, it was being filmed by very amateur people, so it was really well thought out. The Blair Witch Project was uh, the lowest budget movie that made the most money in the end in the entire movie history. It's very notable for being very creative and being absurdly successful. When, like my friend said, the footage was lousy and you didn't get to see anything scary for the entire movie. But I think that was the charm of it. It had a surreal, uh, realistic, uh, kind of a documentary feel to it that make you kind of wonder, could this have been real? Maybe this was real. And if you went online and poked around, you would have found the legend of the Blair Witch and the news reportings and news clippings and uh, different accounts of the story that even convince you that this was actually a real movie from a real incident. And those little newspaper clippings and stuff like that, by the way, were planted by the filmmakers ahead of time because they anticipated that kind of action from the public. So they cemented their story on the internet and social media before they even released the movie. That was extremely, extremely smart. Now, because of the nature of the film, it would have been okay actually if I just don't show you anything for the entire episode and just let you look at a blank background, because that's basically Blair Witch Project. You didn't get to see anything either. But I'm not going to do that to you because it is Toy Thursday, and I do have to show you some toys. So we are going to look at the toy of an action figure of the Blair Witch herself. Now, some people may say, well, how can you make an action figure? How can you make an action figure of a creature that was never seen in the movie? No one knows what it looked like. Well, to the king of action figure, it was apparently possible. All it took was a little bit of original thoughts and creativity and imagination. In 1997, Todd McFarlane came up with two versions of what the Blair Witch would have looked like in his mind in his Movie Maniacs action figure line. And you have in front of you one of the two. I didn't acquire the other one, but this is a very old action figure, one of the older and very complete from my collection, all the way from 1997. Here is what's it we call the Tree Witch. There were two versions, like I said, of the Blair Witch that was produced. Technically, he could produce like hundreds of variations because no one really knew what the Blair Witch looked like. So he could have just go on and go crazy with his imagination. But McFarlane only made two. One was called the Dread Witch, which looked like a corpse, a skeletal corpse, a zombie with dreadlocks. This version you have in front of the camera. This is called the Tree Witch. This looks like uh, a crazily scary plant monster, like if you imagine an evil apple tree that grow arms and legs and walk around and try to kill people. That's what this like. She's primarily brown and green, I believe, and there's a shroud, a white shroud covering most of her features. On her head, a pair of uh, horns that look like tree branches that come out from the side. Her legs look like the legs of some kind of animal, maybe like a dog, with that backward bending profile, and she has 7 toes on each foot. Most of her skins are like tree bark. There's a lot of organic details in this plant-like monster. There's a lot of uh, bark and moss and bone and dirt mixed in. It's just a very gruesome blend of texture on this creature and the skin on this creature. The arms are long and skinny and kind of scaly to the touch. They have sharp claws on the hand and a dew claw that come out from the heel of the hand that makes you think of uh, they're more like feet than hands, actually. The tattered shroud that covered this creature really gives her the appearance of something that been dead for a long time and just claw her way out of the ground and now walking around hunting human prey. There's a lot of rips and holes on the shroud. It may have been white once, but now it's closer to a grayish color. When you take off the top part of the shroud, this Blair Witch has the honor of becoming the first ever topless, completely topless female character ever made as an action figure. But that really doesn't say a heck of a lot when she doesn't really even look human, never mind female. Taking off the top half of the shroud gives you a clear view of the horrific looking head with its wide open mouth with a lot of teeth in it and kind of a skeletal skull like feature. You can see on the body more of that bumpy, cracked bark like texture and making her look like more of a walking tree than any kind of humanoid witch or creature. For an McFarlane action figure, the Blair Witch is actually quite well articulated, although still not very good. But like I said, for McFarlane, who was notorious in making fairly moving action figures, this was really good. She is articulated at the shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, and the 2 horns on her head can swivel around so you can point them down or up as you wish. However, because her neck and waist and knees do not move, so she is for the most part stuck in very few poses. Luckily, her arms still offer a range of dynamic options for her to interact with her accessories with. And of course, you can display her with her shroud on or off. That's completely up to you. For accessory, the Blair Witch comes with a little stick figure and a bundle of sticks with human teeth in it, as we saw in the beginning of this video. Now, those two accessories were direct link to the movie because those were the two items that you do see in the movie. These students would wander around the wood all day and unable to find their way out, and then they will wake up next morning and they will find a little strange stick figure, and other unexplainable artifacts around their campsite. And then eventually, one of them went missing, and all they found of him was his bloody teeth wrapped up in some rags and bundle of sticks. So that was probably the most visually scary part of the whole movie, as I mentioned. Now, the Blair Witch here also comes with a weapon. She has a rusty-looking scythe that it looked like a wicked uh, blade attached to a long stick that she can hold in her right clawed hand, and in which she can use to murder more pesky, annoying film school students. Now, a few shortcomings with this figure is that she is very awkwardly posed with her legs in that crooked dog-like shape. She is forever kind of leaning forward in a very forward lunging, forward leaping posture, which means without a stand, you will have a hard time getting her to stay standing. On top of that, she doesn't really hold onto her accessories all that tightly, so you can get them into her hand, but uh, if she falls off the shelf, she's going to drop everything. She's one of those action figures that can be rather annoying to move and reposition because everything tends to want to fall out of her hand, fall out of her body, because nothing is attached very firmly. Uh, so, unfortunately, Blair Witch may look very scary, but she is kind of a paper tiger, you can say. She will fall over at the drop of a pin, and she will fall apart at the drop of a pin. But uh, with that aside, on the shelf, she does look very, very horrific, very scary, and she has a very unique presence on the shelf as being kind of a scary plant tree-like monster. Even if you're not into Blair Witch Project, uh, which is really a moot point because since she was never seen in the actual movie, you don't really have to think of this as the Blair Witch. This can be the Blair Witch, but this can also be any generic monster, tree, plant type of monster that you have in your Dungeons and Dragons or Diablo or any other fantasy display or modern display like Resident Evil. She's just very, very versatile as a creature that can fill in for all kind of scenarios. She's definitely not your traditional witch with a witch's hat or broom or looking like a old lady, but this Blair Witch looking like a tree monster actually makes a lot of sense when you think how is it possible for her to blend into the forest and the woods in the movie and no one's able to even catch a glimpse of her. I mean, if she looks like this, then yeah, she would just if she stood still, she would just look like another tree to anyone passing by. So it does make a really good sense in a horrifying kind of way. In the end, Blair Witch Project wasn't everybody's cup of tea. The Blair Witch action figure, not everybody's cup of tea. But personally speaking, I really loved the heck out of the Blair Witch Project movie. I have not watched the second one. I was told that second one really, really sucked. So I'm not looking forward to seeing it. But I'm really glad that I watched it. I watched Blair Witch Project with my good friend Mike, and I own an interpretation of the monster Blair Witch herself, and she is a very, very unique looking action figure, and definitely one of the older ones from my collection that is still in tip-top shape. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday. Come back tomorrow for Fitness Friday with Johnny Tiger and Kitten. And don't forget to tune in again next week for more spooky toy goodness.